with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
Our guest on tonight's programme, in fact, I'll give you a quiz question. He was Len Fairclough's son. Yes, Len Fairclough's son. He also nearly appeared in a Judy Garland film at the age of 12, but his mum and dad stopped him. He was born on Bonfire Night in 1900, well, it's well after the war at least. He became one of our most favourite exports. And if I say Sherman, are you getting closer to it? Well, it was a great pleasure to welcome back to his home shores Peter Noone, formerly of Herman's Hermits. Welcome to the Record Collectors, Peter. Can you remember your first musical influence?
My first musical influence must have been probably Sweet Nothings, Brenda Lee, and from then onwards, and Eddie Cochran, and then Roy Orbison, and even Adam Faith. And he was the only English one that I liked. I do like Cliff Richards now, but I didn't like him then. I liked the original records. I liked Sam Cooke, and I didn't like Craig Douglas, and I liked the original records. I was a bit of an American record collector.
Of course, you covered a lot of American 50s, what we might call doo-wop music. And Wonderful Land was a big Sam Cooke record, which was a big hit for you.
Yeah.
But right at the very beginning...
And
the Silhouettes, of course. Right at the very beginning, back in Manchester, you actually literally jumped on stage one evening, and that really started your, sort of, might say, singing career.
What happened was the singer hadn't shown up from this band called the Heartbeats, and I knew a lot of their songs because the songs that they did were from my record collection. So I knew all their songs because they were my songs, basically. They were off my records. In those days, bands just copied records. So I knew all their material already. So I just stepped in for the singer, and they said, "You're better than our lead singer, so come and join the band." So I did.
And is it true that originally it was going to be called Sherman?
Yeah, that was years later. That's a couple of years later. We were watching the Bullwinkle show, and there was Professor Peabody and Sherman, or Sherman and Professor Peabody, and we thought his name was Herman and Professor Peabody. And the bartender said, "Call yourself the Bloody Hermits. You look like hermits." So we called ourselves Herman and the Hermits. We dropped the bloody.
You were, of course, a student at the Manchester School of Music and Drama before all of this. So you must have had your eyes set on a career in the theatre.
You know, I don't know. I went there because my dad was a professional musician, and he wanted me to learn how to read music properly. And the first band I was in was his band. You know, I was the guitar player in his, like, RAF kind of band. You know, the men who stand behind. Yes. And I was obviously a lousy reader because I was only 11, so he sent me to a college of music, and I learnt to read and write music.
Mickey Most must have been one of the, even though he originally turned you down, and as history would have, he came up to, I think, to Lancashire, to Bolton.
He didn't turn me down. He didn't want to sign the band. He wanted to do a solo deal with just Peter Noone. And I said, no, I have to have the band with me, because they were my friends. And we changed the band around about 3 or 4 times, and then we eventually got good enough to make a record.
And I'm into something good, which is probably the track you're most associated with in this part of this side of the ocean. How did you come to choose that track? Was it Mickey's choice?
I think Mickey had it. You know what happened? We had a demo, a Carole King demo, which was just Carole King and Jerry Goffin. Carole was playing the piano and singing lead, and Jerry Goffin was going, "Ooh, one night stand." And we recorded it, and then as we were recording it, we found out that somebody else had recorded it in America, Earl Jean, and then Billy Fury produced a record of somebody in England. So suddenly 3 records came out, but ultimately the best one won, as always.
Now, moving away from that, the next record was also Goffin and King, but it didn't seem as strong. It seemed to have the same sort of riffs. I'm trying to remember what the follow-up was to...
Show Me Girl.
That's right. And it did seem very, very similar, and didn't actually make the top 10. I think it was about 19.
It was a good record, but it wasn't destined to be a #1 record. We never thought it was. It was just a quick follow-up. You know, in those days you made records on Tuesday and they were out on Friday.
Was your father a big fan of something like George Formby?
It wasn't my father. I think it was my grandfather. He used to take me to the Palace in Manchester and the Apollo in Moss Side and places to see all those old, my name's Ed Littler, Hitler with the L of a difference, with an L of a difference, and Nat Jackley. And of course George Formby. So I got to learn from those guys a lot of stuff.
You actually saw George Formby perform then?
Oh, many times, yeah.
When you were in the United States, you must have met some of the great legends. You met Elvis Presley, didn't you?
Yeah, I met all of them actually. All the people I wanted to meet. I met Danny Kaye and Dean Martin, and Elvis Presley. Of course, I was a big fan. And I saw Colonel Parker in Hawaii, and I interviewed Elvis for a radio show. It was the worst interview ever. You know, when you come into England. And he ultimately became a good friend of mine. I liked Elvis. He was a very nice man.
I mean, that is quite a collectible item, your interview with Elvis, and we've got a lot of Elvis Presley fans listening, but that interview is very collectible, as you mean.
Yeah.
Right, and so, I mean, what was Presley really like? I mean, you probably got to see him as an equal.
Well, not as an equal, because I was a kid, it's...
Well, from the same side of the fence.
Yeah, I mean, I was friends with people who were his friends, and they always invited me if they were going to see, like, Jackie Wilson or somebody that they knew I would like. They would always call me and say, do you want to come and see Jackie Wilson? Of course, I would have sold my mother to a Chinese slave trader to go and out with an evening at Elvis Presley. He was just he was a really nice guy, and, he didn't do many interviews, so I was it was a unique thing. In America, there's, like, bootleg copies of it around. It's...
I think they've made their way over here as well.
Oh, really?
Jackie Wilson, of course, probably one of the record collectors at our show, and our listener knows this, one of our favourite artists, and we play Jackie Wilson right for the way back.
Jackie was great. We went to the
You met Jackie Wilson, of course.
Yeah. But Elvis wouldn't go out to him because he said we'll get in trouble if we go out with Jackie Wilson. After the show, Jackie said, come on, we'll all go to this thing. So we didn't go out with him. I mean, I saw Jackie a few times before he got murdered, and he was always a bit out there,
Well, I know that he and Elvis were very close, and Elvis, of course, played for the...
stole all his business. I mean, you saw Jackie Wilson on stage. You saw all the stuff that Elvis was about to do. I mean, he used to take the first two songs just opening his cufflinks on stage. Brilliant.
I mean, one of the things about Jackie Wilson was, of course, Elvis kept paying for all his Medicare right to the day he died.
Elvis did that for a lot of people. Not many people know. Like all the Jerry Schilling and Joe Esposito, they all were bought houses because that was they needed a house, so he bought them one.
What memories have you got about the actual audiences and the British invasion from really the inside? We see it now as an historical fact. It was like taking it all, as Bob Dylan said, taking it all home, as it were, returning it back. It came from America and then we re-exported it. But in your case, that really wasn't so, was it? I mean, Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter, didn't that come from a play a couple of years before? The Lads.
Trevor Peacock.
That's right.
It was a play with I can't think of his name. But anyway, it was a play written by Trevor Peacock called The Lads, and I heard it on the play and I recorded it, and ultimately me and Keith worked it out. It's just a good English song.
A lot of people think it's an old traditional song, that almost like Henry VIII.
Because it's in that vein, it's supposed to sound, The Lads was a song The Lads was a play from another period.
You worked also, of course, with people like Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, Big Jim Sullivan. In fact, some critics might say that you were the original singer with Led Zeppelin. These records are extremely collectible, and one of the questions that people ask, were any of the Hermits on those recording sessions, or was it in fact session men? Or
I'll tell you, the Hermits were on I'm Into Something Good, and Show Me Girl, and Can't You Hear My Heart Beat, and I'm Henry VIII, and Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, and that was it. After that, it was always me and Mickey, and sometimes Carl and Keith would come in and do background vocals, but they never played it. Jimmy Page played guitar on a lot. John Paul Jones played bass on a lot. Jimmy Page played on Wonderful World and Silhouettes, but John Paul Jones played up through Dandy and No Milk Today, and There's a Kind of Hush. Did the arrangements, the string arrangements, the brass arrangements. Played bass. Played two basses on all those records. He played a upright bass and a Fender bass guitar.
P.F. Sloan.
P.F. Sloan, Mickey found him. Mickey Most found him in Hollywood. And he had about 10 songs, and we recorded them all because they're all good. All the Things I Do For You, Baby, loads of them.
And you also broke into movies when the boys beat the girls with Connie Francis.
That was the first one. That was like with Liberace and Connie Francis and Half Presnell, and all we did was sing a couple of songs, and I was the romantic interest with Connie Francis. I played an English guy.
Yes, I saw the movie.
Yeah.
It was a bit like one of the Elvis films in a way.
Same people made them.
Yes.
And then we did some more for the same Elvis producers, Sam Weisman, and then we did Mrs. Brown, You Got a Lovely Daughter, and Hold On, which were all, the same story.
You also, of course, had a hit with This Door Swings Both Ways, that was a transatlantic hit. At the time, of course, your American releases were different from the British releases.
Yeah, they always were, because we had catch-up to do in America. We always were 2 or 3 records behind, so they put out more records. They put 10 singles out in 1965, so, we didn't have 10 singles. We only had 3 singles, so we did Can't You Hear My Heart Beat, Listen People... lots of things came out in America that never came out in England.
Dandy, which in fact was well known by the Kinks fans will know Dandy. Your interpretation of it is often considered to be the ultimate version of that.
Well, ours was the first one. We took Ray Davies wrote it for the band, and we did it our way, and then they did it their way. Yeah, big in America. Yeah, million seller.
Any unreleased tracks that you cut during that bit? Anything that we haven't seen at, Columbia or whichever studios you're at, have never been released?
I doubt it, because we were always about 48 sides behind on the recording contracts, because we were the touring band. We didn't have much time in the studio. We toured extensively. We did like 360 shows in 1965. So we were always playing catch up in the studio. We were always like running in and getting a whole album done in a day kind of thing.
You worked with, of course, you had, I'd say, 20 British hits and 17 hits in the United States. And at one time, in fact, I think you were almost beating the Beatles in the charts in the USA.
Well, we sold more records. You never beat people in the charts. I never go by chart positions. I go by record sales. We sold more records than the Beatles in '65 in the world.
But how many was that? How many?
About 20 million.
Do you know what your total record sales are to date?
It's over 50. It was up to 50 when I stopped counting in 1970.
And how many gold discs do you have?
Me, none. I mean, we were given them, but I never kept them. I always gave them away.
Coming back to the United Kingdom, you in fact recorded with David Bowie, RAK Records, RAK Records. Right. Mickey Mo set that up. Right. You were involved with, I think, RAK, and you actually had 2 or 3 sessions with David Bowie, and that produced a hit for you, didn't it?
Well, he had this song called "Oh You Pretty Things," and we tried to record it, but we needed his sort of dodgy piano playing on it, so he came and played piano on the record. And then we did another one, "Right on Mother," and he had a great song that I never recorded called "Bombers," which, all clear, good song. Can't remember any more of it, but I never recorded it.
A memorable occasion for the theatre go in the UK would be your appearance in The Parents of Penzance in the West End. That would be in the early 80s.
Yeah, I only got that in England because I did the Broadway show and it was a big success, and the producers said, "We can't understand why you didn't do it in England." I said, "Well, nobody in England has ever asked me to do a show." And they couldn't believe that, I mean, it's very English that you have to go to America before you get invited to do a show in England.
You seem to have been incredibly successful. Are there any mountains left for Peter Noone to climb? You've made films, you've actually done Broadway, you've been to the West End, you've had more gold discs than hot dinners, probably. I mean, what is there left to do?
The reason I'm back in England, because I'd rather be a big star in England. I'd like to be a big star in England as well as being a big star in America. And I'm a big star in America. I can't walk through the airport anymore because of TV. I'd feel good if I got in England and I couldn't go anywhere.
Peter, thank you very much for the interview, and thank you even more for the magic of the music.
Well, thank you very much.